The desperate SOS. The galaxy had always been a vast, peaceful expanse, home to countless civilizations. But peace, as it is known, was a fragile thing. Across the stars, the Skarn Empire, a brutal and merciless alien force, swept through countless systems, crushing all who stood in their path. No one had ever been able to stop them. One distant planet, Tursk IV, was the latest to feel the weight of their conquest. The peaceful inhabitants had never seen war. They were a gentle race, advanced in science and philosophy, but they had never prepared for the violence of the universe. The Skarn arrived without warning, overwhelming the planet's defense systems with their superior technology. Cities crumbled under the weight of their weapons, and the people of Tursk IV cried out for help, knowing no one would come. But they were wrong. As the planet's last lines of defense were broken and the Skarn advanced, the Tursk IV leaders had a final idea. They activated an old, forgotten protocol, a distress signal that had been built centuries ago, just in case when the galaxy was much younger. A signal that would reach across the stars and find someone, anyone, who could help. The SOS message was sent. It was a desperate plea for help, one that reached every corner of the galaxy. The Tursk IV leaders hoped against hope that someone would answer, but they didn't know who could or would. As the days passed and the battle raged on, the Tursk IV people could only wait, with their world slipping into the hands of their invaders. The SOS was heard far beyond their home planet. It echoed through the stars, traveling light years across the galaxy, until it reached a small, almost forgotten corner of space. On Earth, the message found its way to a group of commanders and scientists. At first, the message was ignored. It was distant, and humanity was in no position to go to war with an unknown enemy. But something in the message sparked a feeling of urgency in the hearts of the leaders. Humanity had faced its own struggles before, and they were no strangers to adversity. The message wasn't just a call for help, it was a challenge. For years, Earth had been preparing for something. They didn't know what, but they felt it coming. Now, with this SOS, they knew what they had to do. Humanity's leaders gathered quickly in the war rooms of Earth's Central Command. The message from Tursk IV was clear. Their planet was falling, and the galaxy's peace was slipping away, piece by piece. The Skarn Empire was unstoppable, but the leaders of Earth were resolute. If anyone could answer the call, it was humanity. They had the technology, the willpower, and the courage to face down any foe. But the question remained, could they act in time? "We can't ignore this," General Soren, one of Earth's highest-ranking commanders, said firmly. "This is our moment. We've spent years building our fleet for something like this. We can't just sit back while the galaxy burns. We have to act." "But are we ready?" asked Dr. Lara Voss, Earth's leading scientist on military technology. "We've never faced anything like the Skarn. We don't know what they're capable of." "That's exactly why we need to act," General Soren replied. "We can't afford to wait any longer. Tursk IV is gone, but if we don't act now, it could be the whole galaxy next." The decision was made. Humanity would respond. Earth's fleet would be mobilized, a force unlike any the galaxy had ever seen. But there was a problem. Time was running out. The Skarn Empire was advancing at a terrifying pace, and every moment spent preparing would cost countless lives on Tursk IV. Within hours, Earth's most advanced warships, battle-ready ships that had been under construction for years, were ready for deployment. They were massive, outfitted with state-of-the-art weapons and technology, designed to give humanity an edge over any foe they might encounter. But despite their readiness, the fleet was vastly outnumbered. The Skarn Empire was a force that few could stand against, and Earth's fleet was still small compared to the massive armadas of other galactic powers. The first ships took off from Earth's orbital docks, cutting through the atmosphere and into the vastness of space. Their mission was clear: rescue the survivors of Tursk IV, push back the Skarn, and stop the galaxy from falling into chaos. But as the fleet traveled deeper into the unknown, many of the fleet's commanders couldn't help but feel a sense of dread. What if they were too late? What if the Escarn had already wiped out the entire planet? Despite the fear, they pushed forward, and with each passing moment, the weight of the decision grew heavier. They had made a promise to the galaxy. Now, they had to keep it. Humanity's fleet was heading straight into the heart of danger, and with the Escarn closing in on Tursk IV, the race against time had begun. Would they arrive in time to save Tursk IV? Would humanity be able to stop the Escarn from conquering the galaxy? Or would the galaxy fall into darkness, never to see the light again? The answers lay ahead, as Earth's fleet hurtled towards a battle that would determine the fate of countless worlds. The fleet's arrival. The journey to Tursk IV had been long and perilous. Humanity's fleet, now a growing force of ships, raced through the cold emptiness of space, all systems on high alert. The men and women aboard the vessels could feel the weight of what was at stake pressing down on them. Every minute counted. The call for help had been sent. Now, it was up to them to answer. As the fleet pushed forward, Commander Jenna Blackwell, one of the most respected leaders in the fleet, paced back and forth in the command center of the flagship, Victory's Dawn. Her eyes were locked on the holographic map of the galaxy, the path to Tursk IV marked in red. "We're almost there," she muttered to herself, a sense of urgency creeping into her voice. Around her, the officers worked in silence. The ship was a fortress, equipped with cutting-edge technology. Yet despite their advanced weaponry, the officers knew they were facing an enemy far stronger and more ruthless than anything they had ever encountered. "Commander," Lieutenant Alex Cruz said, breaking the silence, "we've detected signs of the Escarn fleet. They're close." Jenna's heart skipped a beat. "How close?" "Too close," Cruz replied, his voice tense. "We'll be in weapons range within the hour." Tursk IV's destruction was imminent. The once beautiful planet was now surrounded by the menacing presence of the Escarn Empire's warships. Humanity's fleet, still not fully battle-tested, was about to face its first real test. The pressure was overwhelming, and there was no turning back. "Prepare the fleet for engagement," Jenna ordered, her voice steady despite the rising panic within. "We're not just going to save Tursk IV. We're going to win this fight." As the fleet approached the outer edge of Tursk IV's orbit, the reality of the situation hit hard. The Escarn fleet was already in place, dark and imposing ships hanging ominously around the planet. Their fleet was massive, with hundreds of vessels, many larger and more powerful than anything Earth had ever built. "Brace for impact," Jenna commanded. The words felt like a death sentence. The Victory's Dawn surged forward, flanked by the other ships in the fleet. The battle was about to begin. In the distance, the Escarn ships loomed larger. They were like black monoliths, their surfaces bristling with weapons of unimaginable destruction. Each one was a testament to the Empire's terrifying power. The Escarn didn't wait to initiate combat. Without warning, their ships opened fire, sending powerful blasts toward humanity's fleet. The first salvo hit one of the smaller ships in the fleet. It exploded in a flash of light, the debris floating helplessly in space. The Escarn had not underestimated humanity. They had simply never believed humans would dare to challenge them. "Return fire," Jenna commanded, gritting her teeth. The fleet's cannons roared in unison, launching a barrage of missiles and energy blasts toward the enemy. The Victory's Dawn fired its main weapon, a massive energy pulse designed to cut through enemy shields. The blast hit one of the Escarn ships squarely, and it shuddered violently before starting to break apart. Humanity had made their mark, but the Escarn were not so easily defeated. "Focus on their command ships," Jenna ordered. "If we can take out their leadership, the rest will fall." The battle raged on, each side pushing forward with relentless force. Explosions erupted around the fleets as ships collided and energy blasts lit up the darkness of space. But despite their best efforts, humanity's fleet was outnumbered. For every Escarn ship they destroyed, 3 more took its place. The relentless onslaught was wearing them down. Jenna watched the battlefield unfold on the large holographic display. Her hands were clenched into fists, but she kept her focus. She had seen battles before, but nothing like this. She could feel the fear creeping in, but she refused to give in. Her fleet would not back down. Incoming fire. Lieutenant Cruz yelled, his voice full of warning. A massive energy blast struck Victory's dawn, sending a shockwave through the flagship. The entire ship shook violently as alarms blared. The crew was thrown off balance, but they quickly regained their composure. The damage was severe, but the ship was still functional. The hull was dented, but they had survived. "Report," Jenna demanded, her voice cutting through the chaos. "We've lost 2 engines, but we're still in the fight, Commander," a crew member responded. Jenna nodded. She knew that time was running out. The Skarn were relentless, and humanity's fleet was losing precious resources. They couldn't sustain this fight much longer. "Hold the line, people," Jenna shouted, her voice booming over the comms. "We are humanity's last hope. We will not fall. We fight for Tursk 4. We fight for every world out there." The battle intensified. Humanity's fleet fired back with everything they had, but the Skarn were growing more aggressive. One by one, Earth's ships began to suffer damage, their shields weakening with each strike. But humanity refused to yield. In the distance, Tursk 4's surface could be seen, now scared and smoking. The Skarn were closing in on the planet, preparing to launch their final assault. If humanity didn't stop them soon, Tursk 4 would be lost forever. The fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. Would humanity's fleet hold strong against the Skarn, or was this just the beginning of their final fall? Hook for the audience. As humanity's fleet faces overwhelming odds, can they keep their momentum and stop the Skarn from annihilating Tursk 4? With each passing minute, the stakes grow higher. The fate of an entire galaxy is on the line. A fleeting hope. The battle between humanity's fleet and the Skarn Empire raged on, its fury only intensifying with each passing moment. The once pristine void of space was now a chaotic scene of explosions and energy blasts, the remnants of ships drifting helplessly in the aftermath. Humanity's fleet, though greatly outnumbered, fought with a desperate determination that came from knowing they had no choice but to win. But as the Skarn relentlessly advanced, humanity's fleet began to feel the toll of the battle. The once vibrant ships, brimming with the latest technology, now appeared battered and bruised. Their shields were weakening, and their weapons, though powerful, were becoming exhausted from the constant barrage. The crew members who had once been calm and collected were now fighting fatigue and fear. Jenna Blackwell, commander of Victory's Dawn, stood at the helm, her hands gripping the controls with a white knuckle grip. Her face was set in a determined expression, but inside, her heart raced. They were running out of time. "Commander, we've lost contact with Fleet Alpha," reported Lieutenant Cruz, his voice strained. "Their flagship has been destroyed. They were the first wave, and now, the rest of the fleet is taking heavy losses." Jenna's eyes flicked to the communication panel, where the once pristine visual feeds of Fleet Alpha had turned to static. The sense of doom in the air grew heavier. The Skarn were not only better equipped, but they were also ruthless. The thought of losing the fleet entirely was more than she could bear. "Keep fighting," Jenna commanded, her voice cutting through the tense silence in the command room. "If we give up now, we've lost everything. We fight for our homes, for our families, and for every world under the Skarn's tyranny." Her words, though inspiring, seemed to have little effect on the crew members. The constant barrage from the Skarn ships made it clear that they were facing an enemy who knew no mercy. Jenna's mind raced for a solution, a way to break this deadlock before humanity's last hope was extinguished. As she scanned the battlefield, she noticed something: a shift in the Skarn's formation. A small gap had appeared in their lines, a momentary weakness that could be exploited. It was a fleeting opportunity, but it was all she needed. "Lieutenant Cruz," Jenna barked. "Prepare the fleet. We're going in." The order was met with a mix of disbelief and apprehension. The Skarn fleet had positioned themselves in a near impenetrable formation, but with this new gap, they had a chance. A small chance. "We can do this," Jenna whispered under her breath, rallying herself for what was to come. "Fleet, we're making a break for it," she ordered. "Target that gap. All ships, follow Victory's dawn." The ships of humanity's fleet, battered and exhausted as they were, sprang into action, breaking from their positions and lining up behind Victory's dawn as it charged into the gap in the Skarn fleet. The energy around them seemed to grow more intense with every second, the weight of their decision heavier with every passing moment. This Skarn, momentarily caught off guard by the unexpected maneuver, quickly responded. Their ships powered up their weapons and began to fire, but humanity's fleet was faster. With precision, they moved through the gap, avoiding most of the enemy fire. For a brief moment, it felt like victory was within their grasp. Humanity's fleet broke through the enemy lines and into the heart of the Skarn Armada. Their ships unleashed their firepower, targeting the Skarn command ships, which were heavily guarded by fleets of their own. Jenna felt the surge of hope in her chest, a feeling she hadn't dared allow herself to feel in the past hours of battle. They could win this. But the Skarn were far from finished. In retaliation, their largest warship, Verak, the flagship of the Skarn fleet, unleashed a devastating energy pulse. The blast hit Victory's dawn head-on, causing the ship to shudder violently. Sparks flew from the walls, and alarms blared throughout the vessel. "Damage report," Jenna shouted, her voice steady but strained. "We've lost half our engine power," came the response. "We're still operational, but it's a close call." Despite the damage, Victory's dawn kept pushing forward, determined to strike at the heart of the Skarn command. They had come too far to fail now. Jenna's eyes never left the holographic display, where she could see the Skarn flagship in the distance. If they could destroy Verak, the rest of the Skarn fleet might crumble. This was their moment, their one opportunity to turn the tide. The ships of humanity's fleet, despite being battered and bruised, followed Victory's dawn toward the Verak. The battle raged on, every shot fired with the intent to end the fight before it was too late. "Lock weapons on their engines," Jenna commanded. "We need to take down Verak if we want to win this." The fleet began to fire with everything they had, aiming at the core of the Skarn flagship. Each blast of energy seemed to chip away at the massive ship's shields, the once impenetrable defenses beginning to falter. But the Skarn weren't going down without a fight. In a last-ditch effort, Verak launched a series of devastating missiles aimed directly at Victory's dawn. The deadly warheads tore through space, closing in on humanity's flagship. For a split second, Jenna's heart stopped. The missiles were coming too fast, and Victory's dawn didn't have the time to evade them. Would humanity's last hope be lost in this final moment? The desperate gamble. The deadly missiles from Verak streaked toward Victory's dawn, their glowing trails cutting through the dark expanse of space. Time seemed to slow, the inevitable collision closing in with terrifying speed. Jenna Blackwell's heart raced as she watched the countdown on her display, every second ticking away like a countdown to disaster. "Braced for impact," she shouted, her voice sharp with urgency. The entire crew of Victory's dawn braced themselves for the imminent explosion. It was too late to dodge the missiles, and the shields were barely holding up under the strain of the continuous barrage from the Skarn fleet. Desperation painted every corner of the ship, but Jenna's mind was clear. This was not the end. Her eyes locked on the holographic display of Verak. The Skarn flagship was vulnerable, its shields weakening. If they couldn't stop the missiles in time, this would be their final stand. But if they could take down Verak, everything would change. The entire Skarn armada would lose its backbone, and the remaining ships would collapse. It was a risky move, but humanity had no choice. "Lieutenant Cruz," Jenna barked, her voice trembling but steady. "Activate the emergency thrusters. We need to get closer to Verac. Now." Cruz hesitated for just a moment. Then his fingers flew over the controls, the ship's thrusters roaring to life. The Victory's Dawn surged forward, accelerating toward the heart of the battle. The crew held their breath, knowing they were about to make the most dangerous gamble of their lives. The missiles grew closer. Jenna's pulse hammered in her ears. With every heartbeat, the inevitable loomed larger. Suddenly, an idea sparked in Jenna's mind. A fleeting thought, something they had never tried before. She turned to her tactical officer. "Can we overload the ship's engines for a short burst of power? Just enough to get us in close range of Verac." The officer's eyes widened. "It's possible, Commander, but the risk." "Do it," Jenna interrupted, her voice firm. "We have no other option." With a nod, the officer began to input the necessary commands. The entire ship shook as the energy cores began to charge beyond their usual capacity, the hum of overloading power filling the air. The crew knew that this burst of power could either save them or tear the ship apart. "Thrusters at maximum," Cruz confirmed, his voice tight with tension. Just as the missiles reached a critical distance, Victory's Dawn surged forward like a comet, cutting through the void with terrifying speed. The crew could only watch as the final moments of the battle unfolded. Then, without warning, the missiles exploded in a cascade of fiery energy. But Victory's Dawn was no longer in the path of destruction. With the burst of power, the ship had shot forward just enough to avoid the deadly blast. The crew members let out a collective gasp of relief. "We made it," Lieutenant Cruz shouted, his voice a mix of disbelief and triumph. Jenna didn't allow herself to feel relief just yet. They had survived the blast, but the real battle was ahead. Now they were within striking distance of Verac. The Escarn flagship loomed large on the display, and Jenna's eyes locked onto the vulnerable target. There was no turning back now. "We have one shot at this," Jenna muttered to herself. "If we don't take down Verac, it's all over." Victory's Dawn cut through the remnants of the Skarn forces, using the cover of the chaos to close the distance between them and the Skarn flagship. The Escarn ships, still reeling from the unexpected maneuver, didn't anticipate the human fleet getting this close. Their attention was divided, and Jenna could see the confusion rippling through the Skarn command. "Lock weapons onto Verac's engine core," Jenna ordered. "We need to hit them where it hurts." The crew worked with a newfound sense of urgency as the targeting systems locked onto Verac's engines. The ship's weapons powered up, and a series of massive energy beams shot forward, striking the enemy flagship. The first shots hit the flagship's outer shields, splintering them with a crackling sound, but they weren't enough. Jenna's heart pounded as she waited for the next strike. "Fire everything we have," she commanded. The fleet's remaining ships focused all their firepower on Verac. Energy blasts, missiles, and concentrated plasma bolts hammered the flagship, forcing the Skarn to try and regroup, but it was too late. Verac's shields flickered and faltered under the relentless assault, cracks appearing along its surface. Direct hit to their engine core. Lieutenant Cruz exclaimed, "We've breached their outer hull." Jenna's pulse quickened. "Keep the pressure on. We need to end this now." As the battle raged on around them, the gap between humanity and victory closed. The Escarn flagship, once thought invincible, was now on the verge of destruction. Verac's shields were collapsing, and its engines were sputtering, unable to maintain full power. But just as Victory's Dawn closed in for the final strike, the Skarn flagship unleashed its deadliest weapon. A massive shockwave of energy designed to cripple anything in its path. "Brace for impact," Jenna yelled. The shockwave hit the fleet with the force of a supernova, sending Victory's Dawn spiraling out of control. The ship shook violently, and lights flickered throughout the vessel. "Status report," Jenna demanded, gripping the console for support. "We're alive." "But barely," Cruz responded. "We've lost half our shields, and our engines are offline. But Verak is breaking apart. Jenna allowed herself a brief moment of satisfaction. They were still in the fight, and Verak, the heart of the Skarn fleet, was crumbling before their eyes. "We can still win this," Jenna whispered, her eyes locked on the dying Skarn flagship. But the final moments were yet to come. The final push. The Skarn fleet was reeling. Victory's dawn, and the rest of the human fleet had sustained heavy damage from the devastating shockwave, but they weren't finished yet. The remnants of humanity's forces, bruised but unbroken, gathered their strength for one final push. They had already proven they could survive impossible odds, and now they would prove they could win. Jenna Blackwell stood at the bridge, her gaze fixed on the burning remnants of Verak. It was still there, its engines failing, shields flickering like a dying star. This Skarn flagship wasn't dead yet, but it was close. If they could just land one more devastating blow, it would be over. And with Verak gone, the entire Skarn fleet would crumble. "We're almost there," Kruz said, his voice steady despite the chaos surrounding them. "But we need more time to get a clear shot." Jenna nodded grimly. They had been through so much. Victory's dawn had taken its share of blows, but the crew had fought like demons. The thought of letting all their sacrifices go to waste wasn't an option. Not now. Not when victory was within reach. "Give me a full systems scan," Jenna ordered. "Are there any weaknesses left in Verak?" The tactical officer quickly fed the data into the console. "We've detected a critical vulnerability in their engine room. Their secondary reactor is exposed. One well-placed strike there, and it's over." A surge of hope ran through Jenna. This was it, the moment they'd been fighting for. The Skarn had underestimated humanity. They'd underestimated Victory's dawn. "All ships, focus your fire on Verak's engine room," Jenna commanded. "We don't get another chance. If we miss, it's all over." The fleet rallied, and all around Victory's dawn, the remaining human ships lined up, their weapons charging. Every crew member aboard had only one thought in mind: to win. To save their galaxy from the Skarn tyranny. To prove that humanity was a force to be reckoned with. "Ready, Commander," Kruz called out, his voice tight with anticipation. "Fire," Jenna shouted, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. A barrage of energy beams, missiles, and plasma bolts tore through the vacuum of space, all directed at Verak's vulnerable engine room. The Skarn flagship's shields were down to nothing, leaving its hull exposed to the onslaught. For a brief moment, everything seemed to hang in the air, as if the galaxy itself were holding its breath. Then it happened. A colossal explosion erupted from the heart of Verak. The shockwave was felt across the battlefield as the flagship's reactor core went critical. Pieces of Verak, once the pride of the Skarn, ripped apart and drifted into the void. The Skarn fleet scattered, disorganized and shattered, their morale broken as their flagship was obliterated before their eyes. "We did it," Kruz exclaimed, his voice filled with disbelief and awe. But Jenna's expression remained serious. "Not yet. We need to finish the job." The Skarn fleet wasn't entirely destroyed. There were still pockets of resistance, and the remaining ships weren't giving up without a fight. But without Verak, the Skarn were like a headless serpent, directionless and weak. "Prepare to mop up the remaining forces," Jenna ordered, her voice firm. "We're not done until every last Skarn ship is neutralized." The remaining human ships surged forward, launching into a final, relentless assault. The Skarn fleet, disoriented and demoralized, was no match for the renewed human forces. Energy beams lit up the dark expanse of space as the last of the Skarn ships fell, one by one. Jenna watched as the last Skarn ship exploded in a fiery ball, their once mighty armada nothing more than space debris. The crew of Victory's dawn had done it. They had turned the tide. The galaxy was safe, for now. A moment of stunned silence passed on the bridge before Kruz spoke again, his voice full of awe. We actually did it. We won. Jenna took a deep breath, allowing herself a rare moment of relief. She could feel the weight of the battle lifting, the exhaustion from days of fighting and uncertainty finally catching up with her. "It's not just about winning," Jenna replied softly. "It's about surviving. We've shown the galaxy that humanity can rise up, no matter the odds." As the human fleet regrouped and drifted toward their victory, Jenna looked out at the endless stars stretching before them. The galaxy was far from perfect, and the war wasn't over, but this battle was one they would never forget. The call for help had been answered, and in that answer, humanity had proven its place in the galaxy, the silent threat. With the Skarn fleet shattered, humanity's victory echoed across the galaxy. The dark shadows that had loomed over countless systems were finally pushed back. But even as celebrations rang out across human colonies, a chilling sense of unease began to settle in. On the bridge of victory's dawn, Jenna Blackwell stood, staring out at the stars. The galaxy seemed peaceful now, but something in her gut told her it wouldn't last. The battle with the Skarn had been intense, but it had been a battle of survival. The real war, the one that threatened to swallow all of humanity's hard-won peace, had not yet begun. The silence of space outside the viewport was unnerving. The fleet was still recovering, and many of their ships needed repairs after the heavy combat. But something was off, an inexplicable feeling that she couldn't shake. "Commander, we're picking up a strange signal," Kruz said, his voice tense. Jenna turned sharply. "From where?" "Deep in the outer rim," Kruz replied, tapping furiously at his console. "It's not Skarn. It's not human, either. But it's definitely not just background radiation. We're getting a clear, focused signal." Jenna felt a shiver run down her spine. "What kind of signal?" "Hard to say. It's encrypted," Kruz said. "But it's getting stronger. Whoever, or whatever, is out there, they want us to know they're coming." The hair on the back of Jenna's neck stood up. There had been no mention of any new enemy. No one else in the galaxy had shown the kind of aggression that the Skarn had. She had hoped that their victory would bring the galaxy back to peace, but now, with this mysterious signal, she wasn't so sure. "We need to know what this is," Jenna said firmly. "Prepare the fleet. We're heading to the source of that signal." The orders were sent out quickly. The remaining ships in the fleet began to mobilize, some still limping from battle damage, others ready to press forward, their weapons charged and shields up. The fleet was smaller now, but Jenna knew they could handle whatever threat came next. They had faced down the Skarn Empire. How much worse could things get? As victory's dawn turned toward the outer rim, Jenna couldn't help but wonder what lay ahead. The galaxy had been holding its breath for far too long. The Skarn were beaten, but this new threat, this unseen enemy, was something completely different. A chilling thought lingered in her mind. Had humanity truly won the war, or had they simply made the first move in a much larger game? Hours passed, and the fleet drew closer to the origin of the mysterious signal. The tension aboard the ships was palpable. Every crew member, from the officers on the bridge to the technicians in the lower decks, felt the weight of the unknown pressing down on them. "Commander," Kruz called out again. "We've got something. It's huge." Jenna walked over to his console, her heart pounding. The readings were overwhelming. What Kruz was looking at didn't make sense. "I'm not sure I understand," Kruz muttered. "This isn't just a ship. It's something massive. It's cloaked. No, it's emitting its own gravity signature. I've never seen anything like it." Jenna's mind raced. "What do you mean emitting its own gravity signature? You're saying it's not just a ship?" "That's right," Kruz said. "It's too big to be a ship. It's like a station. But even bigger than that. I'm not sure it's even a station. It could be something far more dangerous." The silence on the bridge was deafening. If this new enemy was anything like what Kruz described, they were facing something that could make the Skarn Empire look like a footnote in galactic history. "Do we have a visual?" Jenna asked, trying to remain calm. Negative, Kruz said. Whatever this is, it's cloaked. But we got a lock on its position. We'll be in range soon. Jenna's hand tightened around the armrest of her command chair. A cold feeling spread through her chest. They had come here to investigate a signal, to confirm a threat. But the more she heard, the less certain she was that they were prepared for what awaited them. As the fleet closed in on the unknown signal source, the eerie silence grew. A growing sense of dread filled the air, every crew member wondering what they would find. Jenna's voice was steady, but the weight of her words carried the fear that lay beneath. Hold steady, everyone. We need to be ready for anything. The fleet's final approach was slow and deliberate. Each ship's weapon systems hummed with readiness, but even the most prepared ship could only do so much against the unknown. Victory's dawn was ready for anything, but the feeling in Jenna's gut told her that even victory might not be enough this time. The final stand. The fleet was now within range of the mysterious object, and the tension aboard Victory's dawn was unbearable. Each ship, despite the damage it had taken in the last battle, was ready for what was to come. The fleet had faced down an empire, but this was something different. Jenna stood at the front of the command deck, staring at the view screen. The immense gravity anomaly was still cloaked, but it was close enough now that she could feel its pull, like an invisible hand tugging at the fleet. It was no longer just a signal. They were about to face whatever force had been hiding in the outer rim, waiting for the right moment to strike. "Commander," Kruz said, his voice low but urgent, "we're picking up a new transmission. This one is coming from the object itself." "Put it on screen," Jenna ordered, her heart pounding in her chest. The view screen flickered, and a cold, mechanical voice filled the bridge. "Human fleet, you have trespassed into forbidden space. This galaxy is under the protection of the Voidborn. Surrender now, or be annihilated." The word sent a chill through Jenna's veins. Voidborn. Who were they? What kind of power were they dealing with? Kruz analyzed the signal. "Is it coming from the object?" Jenna asked. "Yes, Commander," Kruz replied, his fingers flying over the console. "It's coming directly from the object. But the source, it's not just technology. It feels alive." The realization hit Jenna hard. Whatever this was, it was more than a weapon. It was a living entity. The Tkarn had been ruthless, but they were flesh and blood. This was something else entirely. The galaxy's last hope had just run into a force that seemed far older, far more dangerous than anything humanity had faced. "Get the fleet into position. We don't know what we're dealing with here," Jenna ordered, her mind racing. She needed to think. She needed to strategize, but her options were limited. Every ship was damaged, and they were facing an enemy that could wipe them out without a second thought. "Commander," Kruz spoke again, a sense of dread in his voice. "The object it's moving." Before Jenna could process what that meant, the vast cloaked structure began to shift. It unfolded in an instant, revealing a massive, spiked structure, impossibly large, its dark silhouette towering above them. Thousands of jagged edges seemed to pierce the void, as if the very shape of the object was designed to strike fear into the hearts of anyone who looked at it. The fleet held its position, weapons primed, but no one fired. There was no order to attack. Every crew member, from the bridge officers to the pilots, was holding their breath, waiting for the first move to be made. But they were about to be swept into a conflict that would decide not just their fates, but the future of the entire galaxy. Suddenly, the massive structure emitted a low hum that vibrated through the ships. The gravity field grew stronger, and several smaller ships in the fleet began to drift, their trajectories pulled toward the unknown force. Jenna's mind raced. This wasn't just an object, it was a weapon. And it was slowly, deliberately, pulling them into its grasp. "Commander," Kruz shouted, "we've got no way to fight this. Whatever it is, it's too strong." Jenna's voice was sharp as she made her decision. "We fight with everything we've got. Prepare to launch all weapons. The galaxy's future depends on us standing up to this threat. We can't let it destroy us. The final stand was about to begin. Humanity's last hope had faced an impossible choice: surrender to a force beyond their comprehension, or fight against overwhelming odds. The fleet, battered and broken, had no choice but to take its chances. As the Victory's Dawn powered up its weapons, Jenna felt the weight of history pressing down on her shoulders. She wasn't just leading a fleet. She was leading the fight for the future of everything humanity had built, for the lives of billions of people who had no idea what was coming. "This is it," she said to her crew. We fight. We fight for the future of this galaxy." The battle began in earnest. The immense enemy structure unleashed waves of dark energy that tore through the void, colliding with the human ships in flashes of blinding light. The fleet fought back fiercely, weapons firing at the heart of the void-born structure, but every shot seemed to be absorbed by the dark force. Jenna watched as the fleet engaged, her heart in her throat. They were outmatched, but they had no choice. The galaxy had sent its SOS, and now humanity had no option but to answer it. Would humanity's fleet survive the final confrontation, or would the Voidborn sweep them aside as if they were nothing? The fate of the galaxy hung in the balance.